In a world of flickering neon and cold steel, we are all searching for a moment of genuine connection. Join our community as we explore the beauty of human fragility through stunning 3D visuals and deeply moving narratives. Hit subscribe now and stay connected to the light.
The call came at 4:52 in the morning. I know the exact time because I had just checked my phone 10 minutes before, lying awake in that specific kind of dread you feel when something is wrong, but you can't name it yet. My husband had left for his night shift at the warehouse 6 hours earlier. He always texted me when he got there. That night, he hadn't. When the phone rang and I saw it was a number I didn't recognize, I already knew. "Mom, are you the wife of Kevin Harlow?" I said yes. There had been an accident on Route 9. A truck ran a red light. My husband's car took the full impact on the driver's side. They were doing everything they could, but I needed to come to Mercy General immediately. And then the woman on the phone paused, and she said, "There's something else." "Ma'am, did you know you were pregnant?" I didn't. I was 28 years old. 7 weeks along without knowing it, and my husband was dying 40 minutes away from me. I don't remember driving to the hospital. I remember the parking garage. I remember the fluorescent lights in the ER hallway. I remember a nurse taking my arm and walking me somewhere quiet, and I remember the doctor's face before he said a single word. That face told me everything. Kevin died at 5:31 a.m. Blunt force trauma. He didn't suffer, they said. I've held on to that for 4 years now, and I still don't know if it helps. What happened next happened fast, the way disasters always do when you think the worst is already over. My blood pressure had spiked at some point during the night, severe enough that the ER team flagged it. They ran tests. The OB on call came to see me at 7 in the morning, while I was still sitting in the room where they told me Kevin was gone, and she sat across from me with her hands folded and told me that my pregnancy was high risk, that my blood pressure put both me and the baby in danger, that they wanted to admit me immediately for monitoring. I was 32 weeks along, she said. I told her that was impossible. I told her I didn't even know I was pregnant. She showed me the ultrasound. A tiny spine. A heartbeat flickering on the screen like a candle in wind. I named her after my grandmother. I called her Wren. Wren was born 11 days later. She weighed 3 pounds and 1 ounce. She couldn't breathe on her own. They took her straight to the NICU, and I didn't get to hold her until she was 4 days old. And when I finally did, she was smaller than anything I had ever held in my life. And she was connected to so many wires and tubes that I was afraid to move. The NICU social worker came to see me on day 3. She sat next to me in that room with the beeping machines and the dim light, and she explained the situation in the gentlest way she could. Wren was going to need to stay in the NICU for a minimum of 8 to 10 weeks. The costs were going to be significant. My husband's insurance through his employer would cover a portion, but there were gaps. The hospital's financial team had run preliminary numbers. My out-of-pocket liability after insurance was estimated at just over $41,000. I stared at her. I had $900 in our joint checking account. Kevin and I had been saving for a house. We had $11,000 in a savings account that I couldn't touch without a death certificate, which I didn't have yet because the county was backed up. I did the math in the elevator going back to my room. I called my mother that afternoon. She picked up on the second ring, which surprised me. They were already in Florida. She and my father had been planning this trip for almost 2 years. A 2-week stay at a resort in Clearwater that my uncle had helped them book. They'd left 3 days before Kevin's accident. I had talked to her the morning they flew out. She'd been so excited. "Mom," I said, "Kevin is gone, and I need help." I told her everything. The accident, the pregnancy I hadn't known about, Wren in the NICU, the $41,000, I talked for a long time and she was quiet on the other end. The way she gets when she's processing something she doesn't want to process. Then she said, "Oh, sweetheart." And then she said, "Let me talk to your father." She put me on hold. I listened to silence for 4 minutes. I counted. When she came back, her voice had changed. It was softer, but also more careful, the way people sound when they've decided something and they're trying to deliver it kindly. She said they had already paid for everything. The resort, the excursions, the flights. Non-refundable. If they left now, they would lose close to $9,000. I said, "Mom, your granddaughter is in the NICU. She weighs 3 pounds. She said she knew. She said she was so sorry. She said maybe I should call Kevin's parents. They had more save than she and my father did. She said she and Dad would send something when they got back. She said she loved me." She hung up. I sat in the hallway outside my room for a while. A nurse walked by and asked if I was okay, and I said yes, because what else do you say? Then I called my older brother. He's 3 years older than me. We were never especially close growing up, but I'd always thought if something really bad happened, he'd show up. You assume that about family. You assume it right up until the moment you find out you were wrong. He answered on the first ring. He was with our parents in Florida. He'd flown down to join them for the second week of the trip. I told him what was happening. I asked him if he could come back. Just to be here. I wasn't even asking for money at that point. I just didn't want to be alone. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "Look, I already have my return flight booked for next Saturday. I can't really change it now, there are fees." I said, "She might not still be here next Saturday. She's very small." He said he was sorry. He said I was stronger than I thought I was. He said I'd get through it. Then he said, "Have you called Kevin's parents?" I hung up. Kevin's parents lived in Boise. They were in their 70s. His father had been in the hospital himself 6 months earlier. A cardiac event, nothing fatal, but the recovery had been long. They were not in a position to travel. When I called his mother that evening, she wept on the phone. And she said she would wire me whatever she could. And 3 days later, $2,000 appeared in my account. She apologized that it wasn't more. I told her it was everything. I meant it. The hospital financial counselor worked with me every day for the first 2 weeks. We applied for every assistance program I qualified for. We filed the insurance claims. We argued line items. We set up a payment plan for the remainder. It took months to fully understand what I actually owed, but those first few weeks, every morning felt like trying to climb out of a hole that kept getting deeper. I came home from the hospital 63 days after Kevin died. Ren came home 4 days later, 5 pounds and 2 ounces. Still small, still needing a monitor clipped to her foot while she slept. My parents came back from Florida on a Tuesday. They called me from the airport. My mother said she couldn't wait to see the baby. She said she had bought Ren a little stuffed flamingo from a gift shop in Clearwater. I didn't answer. I didn't answer their calls for the rest of that week. Or the next. My mother left voicemails. My father texted. My brother sent a message saying that I needed to let it go, that they hadn't done anything wrong, that Kevin's death had been hard on all of us, and I was being unfair. I blocked all 3 of them on the 15th day after I came home. I had a newborn who needed full-time medical monitoring, a grief I hadn't even started to process, a pile of bills that made me nauseous when I opened the drawer, and zero energy to manage their feelings about my silence. That was 4 years ago. I want to be clear about something before I tell you what happened next. I did not spend those 4 years obsessing over my family. I had a child to raise and a life to rebuild, and those 2 things took everything I had. I went back to work as a dental hygienist when Ren was 4 months old. I moved into a smaller apartment to cut rent. I paid off the last of the hospital debt 14 months ago. Ren is healthy. She is loud and curious and obsessed with frogs, and she has her father's exact laugh, which still catches me off guard sometimes. I thought about my family the way you think about a scar. It was there. I knew how I got it. I had mostly stopped poking at it. Then my brother called me from a number I didn't recognize, and I answered by mistake. He said my name. I knew his voice immediately. I didn't hang up. I'm not sure why. Maybe I was too surprised. Maybe some part of me had been waiting, without admitting it, for someone from that side of my life to finally say something worth hearing. He said he needed to tell me something about our parents. They had both passed within the last year. My mother first, a stroke, and then my father 8 months later. I had not known. No one had told me, and I had blocked every avenue through which they might have. I sat down on the floor of my kitchen while my brother talked. Ren was asleep in the next room. The refrigerator hummed. I don't know what I felt. It wasn't grief exactly. It wasn't relief. It was something more like the feeling of putting down a box you've been carrying for so long. You forgot it was heavy. My brother said there was an estate. He said our parents had more saved than any of us had realized. The house, which was paid off, 2 retirement accounts, a brokerage account my father had been quietly growing for decades, a life insurance policy. Total value, once everything was assessed, came to approximately $1.3 million. He said he had been named executor. He said that in their will, they had left the entire estate to him. I had been excluded completely. Not a dollar. Not a piece of furniture. Not the silver earrings my grandmother had left my mother that I'd always assumed would eventually come to me. Nothing. My brother said he was telling me because he thought I deserved to know. He said he wanted to give me the chance to make peace with it before the estate closed. He said, and I want you to understand exactly how he said this. He said he thought it would be better for all of us if I just let it go and moved on. I asked him how long he had known about the will. He paused, then he said he had found out, about 6 weeks ago, when he'd first been contacted by the estate attorney. 6 weeks! He'd had 6 weeks to call me, and had chosen to wait until the estate was nearly closed. I said I needed to think. He said he understood. He gave me the name of the estate attorney and said I could reach out if I had questions. He said he hoped we could find a way to have a relationship again someday. He said he missed me. I said goodbye and I sat on that kitchen floor for a long time. Here is the thing I kept coming back to. I had never cared about inheriting anything from my parents. Even before all of this, I was never the child who thought about what I'd get someday. That's not who I am. When I had first blocked them, money was the last thing on my mind. I was just trying to survive. But this was different. My parents had chosen to go on vacation while Ren was fighting for her life in a NICU incubator. They had calculated what that trip was worth to them and decided it was worth more than coming home. Then they had died and chosen, deliberately, to put that calculation in writing one last time. To leave me nothing. To make sure that even after they were gone, I would know where I stood with them. And my brother had sat on that information for 6 weeks, hoping the window would close before I figured out I had options. I made an appointment with an estate attorney, not the one my brother had recommended. A different one. Someone I found on my own. A woman who specialized in contested wills and had a no-nonsense manner that I liked immediately. She reviewed everything I gave her. The timeline. The dates. The fact that my brother had delayed notifying me. She told me that exclusion from a parent's will is legal in most states, but that there were potential grounds to challenge based on the delay in notification and certain procedural questions about how the estate had been managed. She told me it was not a guaranteed win. She told me it would take time and cost money. She also told me that my brother, as executor, had a legal obligation to notify all heirs in a timely manner, and that 6 weeks was a gray area at best. I asked her what she would do. She looked at me for a moment, and then she said, I'd fight it. Not because you're guaranteed to win, but because letting it go without even asking the question is letting them win twice. I think about Ren. I think about the $2,000 Kevin's mother sent from her fixed income because she didn't have more to give. I think about the 63 days I spent in that hospital alone while my family was at a resort in Clearwater picking out flamingo stuffed animals. I think about 14 months ago when I finally paid off the last of those hospital bills, and I sat in my car and I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I was finally free of it. I have not made a final decision yet. I want to be honest about that. I am not someone who makes decisions like this quickly. I have a 4-year-old who needs me to be steady, and a life I've built carefully, and I don't want to spend the next 2 or 3 years tangled in a legal battle that costs more than it gives back. But I also think about what my brother said to me when I called him from that hospital hallway 4 years ago, that I was stronger than I thought I was, that I'd get through it. He was right, as it happens. I did get through it. I got through it without a single dollar from any of them. I got through it with Kevin's mother's $2,000 and a payment plan and a lot of nights where I didn't sleep, and Ren's frog obsession and the particular stubbornness that I apparently got from my father because nobody in my life has ever accused me of giving up easily. So yes, I'm still deciding. But I'm not letting it go quietly. Not this time. Not without at least asking every question I'm legally allowed to ask. They made their choice 4 years ago when they stayed in Florida. They made it again when they signed that will. I get to make mine now. Ren asked me this morning why I looked sad. I told her I wasn't sad, I was thinking. She said thinking and sad look the same on my face. She's 4, and she's already smarter than most people I know. I told her I was trying to decide something important. She asked if it was about frogs. I said no, a little more complicated than frogs. She accepted that, climbed into my lap, and demanded I read her the same book about pond ecosystems that we have read approximately 400 times. I read it. I did all the voices. She fell asleep against my shoulder. I'm going to call the attorney back tomorrow morning. I've been thinking a lot about cause and effect lately. Not in any mystical way, just the plain observable kind. The kind where you watch a decision someone makes, and then you watch what grows from it, and eventually the two things are impossible to separate. My parents made a decision in the worst week of my life. They weighed what they stood to lose, $9,000, 2 weeks of sun, against what I was asking them to face. And they chose the trip. That was their right. Adults get to make their choices, but choices have weight, and that weight goes somewhere. It went into the 63 days I spent in that hospital alone. It went into every bill I paid by myself. It went into the specific kind of quiet that settles over you when you realize the people you were supposed to be able to call in a crisis are just not going to come. And then, years later, they sat down and wrote a will. And they made the same choice again, in ink this time, with an attorney present. They left me nothing. Not out of oversight. On purpose. I think that's the part that took me the longest to sit with. Not the money. The deliberateness of it. They had time after everything to reflect on what had happened between us. And what they decided in the end was that their position had been correct all along. My brother held that information for 6 weeks before he called me. He had the document in hand, and he waited, I think, hoping the window would close before I understood what I was entitled to ask. That's not the behavior of someone who believes he's doing the right thing. That's the behavior of someone who knows he isn't. Here's what I've learned from all of it. Not as a lesson I was taught, but as something I had to figure out the hard way. In real time, with a premature baby and a stack of hospital bills, and no one coming. Integrity is not something you perform when it's easy. It's what you do when it costs you something. When Kevin's mother sent me $2,000 from her fixed income, that was integrity. She didn't have more. She gave what she had. My parents had more. significantly more. And they calculated it differently. I think about what kind of person I want Ren to grow up to be. I want her to be smart. Genuinely smart. The kind of smart that notices when something doesn't add up and asks the question anyway. I want her to be honest, not just with other people, but with herself, about what she's doing and why. And I want her to be sturdy, not hard, not closed off. Just sturdy. The kind of person who can take a real hit and still decide deliberately who she's going to be on the other side of it. Those three things don't come from having an easy life. They come from watching the people around you make choices, good ones and bad ones, and paying attention to what those choices produce. Ren is going to grow up watching me make mine. That's not pressure, it's just the truth. She's already watching. She already noticed that thinking and sad looked the same on my face. I'm calling the attorney tomorrow. Not because I'm certain I'll win. Not even because I need the money. Though after 4 years of doing everything alone, I won't pretend the money is meaningless. I'm calling because letting it go without asking any questions is a kind of answer too, and I'm not willing to give that answer. Not about this. My parents made their choices. My brother made his. Now I get to make mine. I know which one I'm choosing.